Okay, we're just going to quickly do a review on, on resolution. And everybody in here has had Photoshop, I believe, so we're all going to do quick reviews. You guys remember the difference between raster art and vector art, right? Raster is what Adobe product do we use when we do rasters? Photoshop. Yep, and vector is? Illustrator. Yep, good. So high resolution, 300 dpi or ppi pixels per inch is when we shove 300 pixels per square inch or 300 drops of ink per square inch to get that good continuous tone photographic look. Low res is when it's on a screen or a monitor and we light up 72 dots per inch or pixels per inch. So on your digital cameras, you guys might have come across a window in your menu settings where you see things like how you're going to record the size of your pictures. In the Getting to Know Your Camera worksheet, one of the questions was how many megapixels is your camera? And I can tell you that on point and shoots, for sure, in early days, it always said it right on front because that was one of the big selling features. So who can tell me how many megapixels they have? I just want to kind of know what we're working with. 8 on that Sony? Really?
Says right there.
Wow, okay. 18, 12, 19. So we're all kind of at least 8 and above. So you can record the full megapixels that your camera can record, or you can do smaller sizes if you wanted to. You could choose high, medium, small, postcard, email, widescreen. You can change the formats of how it records. But if your camera can record 18 megapixels, why would you put it down to only 9 or 6 or 3? In the old days, you might do that because that was enough quality for what your end result was going to be, and you needed room on your camera card, on your SD card, because they were small. They were only a few megs. So you might have said, yeah, I'll shoot at like 5 megapixels, even though my camera can do 10. Now that we all have monster SD cards and they're cheap, this is not really an issue. So keep it set at that highest so you always have the most resolution possible. If you decide you want to make a 2 foot by 3 foot poster, you're going to need as many pixels as you can get. Also, if you have a setting on your JPEGs where you can pick the quality of them, set it to large and fine for best results. Keep it all at those highest qualities. So you guys have seen this where the picture looks great on screen, 72 dpi, fills your monitor, and then you go to print it out and it looks absolutely horrible. Or you try to print it bigger. You guys know the difference between low res and high res because we've had all these classes on it, but it's really important to think about it in terms of what your camera does. So your camera records those pixels at a certain resolution. This camera and most that I've seen record at 72 dots per inch, which you go, well, that's low resolution. Why would they do that? That's just what it records it at, but it records 25 megapixels worth. So the physical size is literally like 35 inches wide by 20 inches deep at 72 dots per inch. Then when you squish it together and bring it to 300 dots per inch, you're still able to get 11 by 14 prints or whatever out of it. It doesn't matter what size it records at, it's just you need to change it later on based on your output.
When you get ready to render it, right? When you get ready to render it, you need to change it. You know what you mean?
Yeah, when you're going to go print it out or use it some way, you need to change it. So this is the example. This camera shoots at 6 megapixels. So 6.18 megabytes or pixels is what it records, period. That's the best it can, which results in 1,800 pixels wide by 1,200 pixels deep. That's the size it records. So I'm going to wait till this comes back to the first scene. It records at 72 dots per inch. 25 inches by 16 is how big it could be. That's what the camera records. But if you want it to be high res, if you change the resolution to 300, it's now only going to be able to print 6 inches by 4 inches. It takes all those pixels and smushes them down. So we did that in Photoshop. We took our pictures and made them smaller, right? For various reasons. I can picture that lighthouse at Sturgeon Bay exercise early on where we had to make it a certain size. So your camera's going to record at 72 dots per inch, but it's going to record huge files. You just need to tweak this to be what you want it to be in your end use. Has anybody ever emailed you a picture and they sent you the version that is all 6 megs and it's 72 dots per inch and it's this big physically? Therefore, when you pull it up on your screen and it's a picture of Grandpa and Grandma, all you see is Grandpa's nose. and you have to scroll over to see grandma's nose and scroll up.
I do that all the time on the internet. Like I'll go there and try to get a picture from there. Do it.
That's the big
one.
one.
Be like this big.
Yep.
And then I bring it into the program. Do it. It's like.
Well, that's weird because that big on the internet, I understand, because we make them small to appear.
Right.
We don't want to have big pictures on the internet because they take up size on our server. But when people email you, like if you say, hey, that picture you just took out there, send that to me. Like if you guys were to do that today, if you email them the one straight off your camera card, it's going to be 18 megapixels, 25, 10, whatever. It's going to be huge. If that's what they want, great. But if all they want to do is just see it, you would probably downsize it into just a pretty 8 by 10 visible on their screen at 72 dots per inch because they're just looking at it. They're not going to print it or use it. There's no need to send 25 megabytes worth of data when a few KBs will do. That makes sense? Okay. So we're going to be doing this because going forward, the pictures you take, we're also going to be working with digitally in Photoshop. And when you submit them to me, I don't want 25 meg files. You have to resize them. So we'll talk about that next week. All right, back when digital cameras first came out, 3 megapixel camera was pseudo affordable. A 4 or 5, these were in the big bucks range when they first came out. And people always wanted as many megapixels as possible so they could make big prints. So they would, tell their parents that they had to have an 8 megapixel camera. They tell their spouse, I have to buy this one if we want this kind of quality. Now you guys are all in this zone and bigger. We've got lots of pixels to deal with. So making prints is not such a big issue, but you need a 3 megapixel camera to make a decent 5 by 7 photographic print at high res. That's
so what's the
period.
highest megapixel camera that they have right now?
We should Google that. It's going to be huge and it's going to have a huge price tag. There's one that is ridiculous high res that's, like $80,000.
Aperture. What's the highest that the aperture goes on the camera? Because I only got 8 on this, and George says she got like 25 on hers or something, 24 aperture.
It depends on your lens, and it also depends on the lighting. It might be able to go up to 22.
You mean
but
on this camera, like if I went outside and did it,
yes,
exposed it, it'd probably.
It could, because a point and shoot is only going to show you how low and how high it can go given the light conditions you have. If you go out on a sunny day, you might now see 16 or 11 and 22 and 16 f-stop show up. On these cameras, they're always there because we see them right on our dial. But on a point and shoot, it'll be dependent on the lighting conditions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You learn something new every day.
Exactly.
It's 128. 20.
All right, so that's resolution. The last one we want to look at today, before we actually try this, is how we get pictures off our camera. So, yep, how do we go from there to your homework? What have you guys been doing to get pictures off your camera into your computer? Kyle, what do you do?
Open it up and see.
Okay, so you're taking your SD card or using a
Yeah,
cable?
that's all you have to do is go to the SD card, open it up, and drag it to your phone. Drag it to your
That's one way. So SD card plugged into your computer is one way. A cable from your camera to your computer is another way. Anybody have a Wi-Fi enabled camera? Because I had one in my last class. So
I haven't tried it.
yeah, so
Direct
that's
link
another thing.
too. Got direct link too.
There's no worry about taking your card out and forgetting it here, which ironically I had left mine here since Monday because I teach on Monday also. So we always have to remind ourselves. We should all have a Post-it note up here that says, did you take your SD card?
Yeah.
So we can use cables, wireless, or we can pop out our SD card. Now, in the days before you guys owned any Photoshop or Bridge especially, if you didn't have Bridge to help you bring your pictures in, how were you doing it? Dragging and dropping is what I'm hearing? Just into folders, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you can use the cable in the software, you can use a card reader. When you plug in a card into your computer, it's going to, especially on a PC, it's going to populate with all the different options of how to open it. And that's going to be based on what software you have installed on that computer.
Formatting, right?
Yeah, whatever is available to you. So back in the old days when I would plug into my PC, this is what would pop up. I just copied them all. Some are always there. So on a PC, you'd have copy pictures to a folder using the camera wizard. That would be an option. View pictures in Media Center, view a slideshow, print, copy the disk, and then from here to here was dependent on what software or hardware I had installed. So I had something called Roxio that dealt with pictures, so that was an option. I had CS4, so you know how long ago this was when I did this. That's been a long time.
Photoshop 4?
Well, it's Creative Suite 4. Photoshop
Oh,
went
yeah,
up
yeah.
in numbers to 7. I think 7.0 was the highest number. Then it went Creative Suite, CS2, CS3, 4, 5, 6. How high did CS? 7 or 8. And then we went into CC. So I've been playing with this software since 1995. All right, so that pops up. I had a little HP printer that would print 4x6 color photos. Because that knew how to deal with it, that was an option. Like, it had its own software to deal with it. I also had Photoshop Elements, which is the home easy version of Photoshop.
I got that actually still.
That actually comes with a lot of cameras. Digital cameras will ship with that now. So anyway, this is what you'd see on a PC. And then I think what most of us did before Bridge was it would pop up, here's all the contents on your card, and you would probably drag them over into a folder, right? That's just what we all did. All right. How you organize your photos is really, really important because it's a virtual file cabinet. If you have a folder called Pictures and you just keep dragging stuff over and they're numbered P105927, how many of you have kind of that kind of little mess going on? Good, not many. This is good to know.
But man, they just ain't raising their hand.
Probably. So you have to think of a way of filing that works for you. And more importantly, if you guys are working on a job as graphic designers, what's going to make sense for your office? How are other people going to find these assets? So the one thing that all digital photos have in common is the date that they were taken, right? There's a date associated with them. So that's a really good way to organize. So my version of it is I have a folder called Digital Photos, and then inside it I have 2019, and I have a folder for 2018, 17, 16, all the way back. Inside those, I have all the months. Inside the months, if it's just a picture I took outside of that fire hydrant thing, I would put that in 2019, April, and it would just be in there loose. But if I went somewhere this weekend, I would have a subfolder of, Green Bay. So I would know where those are, a subfolder named in there. That way it's really easy. If I want to find something, if there's a certain event that we do every year in September, I know I just have to go to the September folder, find the subfolder of my event, and there's where all my pictures are always going to be. If you have photos that are called, or folders, like you say, I have one called Kids, I have one called Dog, where are you going to put the picture of the fire hydrant?
Kids.
Miscellaneous, the dreaded miscellaneous. So you really have to think personally, whatever works for you, but on the job, you have to think, how are people that need these assets going to know where to find them? So the way you make your folders and save pictures into folders is really important. Another thing is logical names. When you actually rename the file itself, anything is better than image 547, this jazz, right? Because you have without a preview, you have no idea. So even if it's just firehydrant.jpg, that's much more helpful. Some people, me included, like a long, long, long time ago, when digital cameras first came out, I didn't know that metadata existed. I didn't know that it was recording all that, always. So I would always put the date in the file name too. Got to be cumbersome, but at least I knew exactly when the picture was taken. Well, after you find out that that's all in the metadata, you don't need to do that. It's all there. You can always find it. All right, and then once you're in Photoshop, work in a non-destructive workflow. And we've talked about this in Photoshop, but when you're doing photography and editing, this is pretty important. You should always save the original off the camera, that whatever you called it, 12345.jpg or firehydrant.jpg, exactly as it came off the camera. Keep that in a folder. That's your backup. Then you work on it. So let's say it's one of the shots you took today of your group pictures. You go in and you do the basic workflow that we're going to practice again next week in Photoshop, where you look at color, you look at exposure, you look at sharpening it, you look at fixing any blemishes, if there's anything in the picture that shouldn't be there that you're going to clone out, you do all that. But you do that to the full frame, full 24 meg image. You don't do any cropping, and this is really important. And then you save that file as a PSD, right? So if you later come back and say, man, I color corrected pretty poorly, they look green, I need to fix fix that, you can, right? If it's a PSD and you use adjustment layers, you can always go back and fix that. So this is the full file that you take. Then you actually output them to what you need. So here's an example of, this is the frame that came out of your camera. And let me think, here's the picture that you took of all your people right here. And this is how your camera took it. So mine is like 5,000 pixels by 3,500. And then I go, you know what? I need a 4:6 horizontal. So I would go in and do the 4:6 at 300 DPI. I would crop it down, and then I would save it as whatever descriptive name, 4x6.jpg or .tiff. That's my flattened version of that. That's the one that I would use in a magazine or whatever. But what if in your original photo, you decided back at this stage of PSD that you were going to crop it some, and you did a cropping like this, and you permanently got rid of all these pixels. They're now gone. And now you come in and you need to do a 4:6 tall, and you don't have enough pixels to make it work. In order to get the people in this way, you need more height, and you no longer have it because you trimmed your original size. Sometimes that's going to happen, and you got to think of creative ways around it. But you never want to have it happen where you had more pixels available to you, but you got rid of them too early in the process. Does that make sense? So do all your editing on the full frame and save that as a PSD. And then from there, when your client says, I need that as a 5:7 for this magazine, you go to this and you make a 5:7 TIFF image for the magazine. You always have it. Okay? All right, if you guys have Adobe Bridge in real life, which now we all do, typically when you insert an SD card, Bridge is going to launch, or it should. And that's nice, because that's what we want to actually use. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at actually going through this process, and we're going to do it the right way, the best practice way, using Bridge. So even though you probably know how to do this, I want you to go slow and not jump ahead of me, because there's some things I want to share with you. So pop out your SD card, or use that card reader, and plug it into the back of the Mac. And we're going to walk through this process. Oh, do you guys need your screens?
Kinda.
Okay, hold on. All right, you have them back now? Okay, so I want you guys, if Bridge doesn't launch on its own, I want you to go ahead and launch Bridge. You can go either up to your Adobe icon at the top and launch it from there, or you can come down to the launch pad down here and just scroll left or right until you find Bridge 2019, and then go ahead and open that.
Bridge extension effects 16 that's been added to Bridge.
So plug your camera card in. I remember getting a pop-up, and I see, Andrea, you have that. What does that say?
Oh, I already put that
Okay.
out.
Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah, dismiss it. We'll see if it happens to me again. Okay, so with Bridge open and your SD card in the back of the computer, the way that we get pictures off of it is this icon up here. This looks a little bit different. I'm in Bridge 2019. I had 2018 and 19 on mine, and I just intentionally went to 19. It's a little bit different. There used to be a down arrow, but at any rate, we're going to click on that camera icon, and it should say, get photos from camera. And then you'll get that, do you want this to launch every time a card reader is inserted? And that's a yes or no or whatever you want. I'm just going to say no for now. So click on that icon, and this is what you're going to get. But what you probably are getting is this standard view, like this one. I want you to change and go down to the lower left and click on the advanced dialog. Because in the standard view, you don't see as much as you do here. Then I want you to come up to the Get Photos From and select the device. Sometimes they're going to be named a little bit more descriptively. In this case, it's Untitled 1 is what mine is. And that's going to go and get all the pictures on your camera card. And it's going to say, in my case, I have 803 files for 10 gigs. So I clearly haven't cleaned out this card. There's a lot on here. Right now, every single picture is checked by default. It assumes you want to bring them all in. Clearly, I don't, and maybe you don't either. So at the bottom, there's an Uncheck All button. I want you to click on that. And then you can scroll through and you can find the pictures that you really do want to import. And it's going to take a while for those previews to load. But from here, you can either individually click the checkbox underneath them, or if you want to do a whole bunch, you can click and drag, and all this is going to do first is put a blue outline around them. After you do that, you have to go back and click on one of the checkboxes. That's going to check all of them. The blue outline around them alone does not do enough. You have to get that checkbox. You also need to be in this advanced view to see this. And you need to be in that view for me to show you some other things. So pick a handful of pictures that you want to bring in. Don't do anything yet because we have a lot more to go through. All right, then let's go over to the right-hand column, Save Options. What? Okay, then at the top it says where it's going to go. It says Users, My Identity, Desktop, April 1 Pics. If that's not where I want it to go, and I want you all to change this, I want you to click the Choose button. And then we're going to pick actually where we want this to go, and we can always make a new folder, which is what I'm going to do. So on the desktop, I'm going to put mine on the desktop, and then I'm going to go to the lower left corner here where it says New Folder. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to call this April 4 Pics. You know, in real life, you would name this whatever the topic is that you're importing and say Create, and then Open. That changes this line to be the location to exactly where you want it to go. If this popped up and said, say you're using the naming conventions that I have, and it said Digital Pictures 2019 April, that's exactly where I want to go. I then, instead of going this route, I just could have clicked here and created a new subfolder and named it whatever I want, knowing that it would go into the April 2019 folder family. So you can either go this route, or if you're already in the right root directory, you can add a subfolder right here. So in that subfolder, you can do a custom name, or you can have it create something based on the day's date. Then in the rename files, your options here are to not rename them, or all these other options that you see. And one that can be kind of helpful is custom date, and I'll explain why that is. Let's say you were out, where did we go on our pretend world trip last week when we were doing travel photography?
What?
This one's
Belize? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say that we were in Belize and we just did a whole day out on a catamaran on Giraffe Island. That's the name of our island. And we have 800 pictures that are all from Giraffe Island. One easy and good way to be was when you bring these in, you could at least rename them with a custom name. And if you went into that and you wrote Giraffe Island, what it would do is it would name it Giraffe Island 001, Giraffe Island all the way up to 800. So at least those 800 pictures would have some identification right off the bat, which can be helpful if you want to do that. We're going to go back and say none for the rename, or do not rename files, but that's a cool option when you're bringing in a bunch that you want to give a group name to. In the advanced section down here, Open in Bridge is checked. We want that to happen. Then convert to DNG. Anybody know what that is? Ding. DNG stands for digital negative. It is the generic name for any camera RAW file that can be opened by anything. So those of you that have Canons, it gets recorded as a CR2 or a CRW. That's what your RAW files are. If you have a Nikon, it gets recorded as a .NEF. So you have a Nikon. If I were to take your camera card and put it in my, your SD card, put it in my Canon, it wouldn't know what an NEF file is because that's unique to Nikon. Bridge understands it, but if you wanted to be super safe and not know what your end user was using, you could have all of your raw files converted to this generic .dng that anything can open. That's what that stands for. Delete original files. I would never recommend that you check this because until you're positive that your pictures have been safely downloaded in multiple locations, you shouldn't delete them off your camera card. That's your last breath of gasp of air. So I would not do that ever. Then my favorite feature for real life application is save copies to. How many of you have ever had a hard drive fail? How many of you will have a hard drive fail? Everybody, put your hands up. It's going to happen. So, the hard drive on the Mac here, you have a folder called Photos. Just by making another folder called Backup of Photos on the same hard drive is nothing, right? When the hard drive fails, both of your folders are gone. So in real life, in the real world, you should have backups. And anybody have a external hard drive that they plug in? Yep, those are awesome, right? They're 1 terabyte, 3 terabytes, fairly cheap now. You plug that bad boy in, and it's now, gives it whatever letter drive it needs to be. Let's just say it's J. And down here, you navigate to J. You navigate to a folder that you call Pictures. You navigate to 2019 to April. And when we hit Get Media, it's going to take your one file and it's going to put one on your Mac and one on your external hard drive at the exact same time. This is huge because how many of you tell yourself, I should back up my computer. I should put all the pictures that are on it on my hard drive. I'll do that this weekend. Anybody ever lost a hard drive? I came home one day and I heard this high-pitched noise and I couldn't figure out what it was and I kept walking and I get closer and closer to my office. Down low is my hard drive ready to go. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Where and when have I last backed up? Because family pictures, business documents, everything, right? Scared the bejesus out of me.
I had one fail on me, and I tried to take the geeks while they wanted like.
Sometimes they can fix them though.
They wanted like $200 just to open it up. I'm like, no.
I'd give them $200 to get my stuff back at that point. See, that's how scary it is. But to me, when it's your family pictures,
That's your profession, though. It wasn't. Yeah.
when it's your family pictures and your business documents, it's important. But here's something I did, and I'd forgotten that I did it. It's an interesting story to share with you guys. Anybody heard of Carbonite? Okay, so Carbonite is software that you put on, and you tell it what files on your computer to back up. So the first time you get it and buy it, you say, I want everything on my C drive backed up. You just say whatever. That's what I want. Obviously, it's going to take a while the first time. In my case, it took days to get it all uploaded to their cloud. But then from then on, anytime you change a file or add things, they get added to it behind the scenes. You forget about it. I had that. I forgot I had it. I brought my hard drive out here. I took it to the CPR room. They tried to fix it. They couldn't resurrect it. I was almost crying, and I was driving home, and I heard an ad for Carbonite. And I'm like, God, I had that. I forgot I had that. I went on, I logged in, and I said, like, rebuild my life, check that box, whatever it was, and little by little, all of it came back from the cloud back.
There's some services that do that, or they'll send you an external hard drive, like with everything on it.
Exactly.
Like they'll mail it to you and you get it like in 2 days or
It
whatever.
is the greatest feeling on earth, because I totally forgot it was there. It was in the background all my life, and to me, it was a lifesaver. So at a business, they're going to be saving, backing up to 2 different servers, 2 different hard drives always. But in your real life, you should really consider something like that, and or using cloud storage. Put things in OneDrive or in Adobe's cloud. Save things there, because the minute your hard drive dies, you will kick yourself so hard for not having good backups, and you will cry. You will. So that's the thing that you can get it the very first time you put in your SD cards. It's saving to 2 different physical locations right off the bat. That's huge. Then this last part is pretty cool. Under Creator, type in your name, and in the copyright, type in the year. Because why not? That means that every picture you pull in, the metadata has your name and your copyright date on it. So when you see your picture floating around that somebody stole, you can look at the metadata and say, that is mine. There's my name and my copyright on the metadata. Why not do it? Bring it in instantly like this. Okay? So from here, I want you to have a handful of pictures selected, if nothing else, the ones you took today. Say, Get Media. And this is going to go by, and it's going to say where it's going. If you have two locations, it's going to say it's going to this, and then it's going to fire up and say it's going to your other drive as you go through this. After it's done, it brings you into Bridge, and you have the view that we've seen before. And remember, in Bridge, you can tweak the view of your windows here. So this content window, I like to keep, whoops, small. Okay, what did I just do? I need my glasses. This content window I like to keep fairly small, but I like to have my preview window big. Only single click on an image and you're going to get it brought up in your preview window. So this is a much easier way to look through your pictures and decide what's good and what's not good. You can then scroll through these, and remember, we did this briefly in Photoshop where we talked about the star rankings, right? So if this is a picture that you like, you can give it 5 stars right away. And if it's a dud, you can give it 1 star. And then later you can go back and you can sort by all of your 1-star pictures and delete them because you know those are all duds. You can sort by all your 5-star pictures and really drill down and pick the best one out of that. So using the star ratings is really helpful. The other thing that you need to know is that when you're looking at an image, in the preview, right below it is the metadata window. And here is where, in this first view, you get the quick view of how your camera was set up. So this little window here shows me that this shot was taken at an f-stop of 5.6, 1/60th of a second. It was on matrix or evaluative metering, meaning everything was metered. Exposure compensation I bumped up to 0.33, and I kind of leave my camera there lately. I like it a little bit brighter than it is naturally. This is white balance. When it's a thing like this, it's a custom white balance, and I know I did that because it was weird fluorescent lighting in there, so I know I had it based on what a white point was in that lighting, and the ISO was set at 400. My camera records at 3,400 pixels by 5,100 pixels. And then from there we can go down and twirl open these other metadata pieces, and we can see things like the date it was taken, which is helpful when you guys are arguing over what date something was. Maybe it's a family picture and nobody can agree on the year. Not everything here is useful. IPTC core, this is where you're going to see your creator name, which is helpful, and the date created. And then in the extension, not that one, the next one down, camera data. This is where you really find a lot of information. Twirl that one open and look at your own camera data for that. This is going to tell you focal length, how far out you were zoomed in or out. It's going to tell you what lens was on the camera if you have an SLR. It's going to tell you if the flash went off, what metering mode you were in, what white balance you were in. It's going to tell you what camera actually took that shot. So if you have multiple cameras, this is telling me the 60D took that. So a lot of details in this camera XTIF option right here. GPS, there are cameras that are GPS enabled that will label the coordinates of where you took the shot. So if you're really into travel or mountain climbing or something like this, and you want to know exactly where you were when you took that shot, elevation or altitude, longitude, and latitude, that can be recorded if your camera offers that. And these others don't pertain, but there's some really good information in here. The cool part about this, and since you all have Bridge, is that from now on, when you turn in your photos and I ask you how your camera was set up, you can say, I used portrait mode because that's the only way I can get this on my camera, like on a point and shoot. Or you can say I went into aperture priority mode, and unless you're writing it down, you're not going to remember it, right? But here it's all here. So you can say in aperture priority mode, I picked an aperture of 5.6. My camera chose the shutter speed of 1/60. You can say what ISO was chosen or if it was auto. And if it's auto, sometimes it will fill in what number it picked. You can tell all the details that were actually used on that shot, whether you remember them or not. You can find them. Okay? All right. Did we look at Camera Raw last week? Did I show you that demo? Or was that the other class? It was you. Okay. So these are the Camera raw, if you're shooting in raw, so
Oh, yeah.
CR2, this is a raw photo of this exact same one, 7448. I have my camera set up to record a raw image and a high JPEG because sometimes I don't want to have to take the second step in camera raw. I just want to use a JPEG and move on. But if you double click on a camera raw, it's always going to first launch Adobe Camera Raw. It can't go straight into Photoshop. That's the bottom line there. Whereas obviously with a JPEG you could. My limit has been reached. Whatever. No, I don't want to quit. Leave me alone. So, having done that, I'd like you guys to look at your group shots. I hope you imported them right now. And look at them in Bridge and find the one that's the best. So you can use that carousel. Do you guys remember that? Let me... If I want, I'm going to have to do this. Hold on. It's frustrating that Bridge works, but now I have to do this. What? It's making me take a test?
Let's test your abilities.
With a storefront. Good grief.
Yeah, I think you're a computer. I don't know why all the pictures inside turn blurry outside.
Oh my gosh.
That's terrible.
Select images with a bus. Leave me alone.
Why does that gotta come up?
I have no idea. I've never seen it before.
Yeah, dude, that's like stuff on my page. Like, in one-
Oops, that's not a bus. Oh, now I failed again.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. Yeah, right.
Okay, I am getting angry.
One in a row. That is gonna keep sending you.
Okay, I am done. I want to quit. Yes, I want to quit. Well, that's ironic. Now everything works. Okay. The other thing that I told you when you're examining a bunch of pictures, trying to find the best one, remember that if you select, put a box around them like this, and you want to look at them in the carousel feature, it's Command B, the letter B, and then you can right and left arrow through them, and if you find one that you don't like, you hit the down arrow and that kicks it out, and you keep looking, and you hit the down arrow, and you keep looking, and you down arrow. And eventually you're left with just one picture, so you can find your favorites if you're looking at a bunch. So did you guys find a decent shot from today? Do you think you did a good job with arranging people and all that fun stuff? No? Can you see where it's kind of awkward and hard directing people at first if you're not comfortable with
Like I
it?
said, because we're not, like, if it was a family, like, if it
Yeah.
were my kids, it'd be a lot easier.
What if, though, your job at work is to take a picture of the IT team and they're not your family and you don't know them because you don't work in IT? You still have to do this. Granted, you're not going to get them touchy close, but there are some, a lot of these look good as I'm just seeing, but there were some early on where you guys had big gaps, like people were not getting close enough. So, all right. Let me go. For next week, your homework is to take portraits. So, I'm going to give you the rubric. You're going to staple this with your homework next week because you're not going to lose it. Rubric's on one side, this explanation slide is on the other. You are going to take pictures, portraits. Again, remember you have to do at least one human. You can only do one pet shot. You can't do two humans. You're going to include a caption of the picture, when and where taken. You are going to, you're going to tell me how you set up your camera and why, and then more specifically, using Bridge, you're actually also going to write down what the settings were. Like, I went in aperture priority mode and I set the aperture to f11 because I heard that's the best for a portrait. And then you're going to write, so my camera then picked the shutter speed of blah, blah, blah. Here's the ISO that it picked. If I was in a different metering mode, you're going to tell me what that metering mode was. You're going to give me the whole background and why. And then you're going to also talk about those composition principles. So for portraits, what were some of those that we talked about? Focus on their eyes. Magic numbers F11, but let's talk composition.
Stay with face. Distance.
Stay away from what?
Their face. No, like them as a person. If you want to get
Give them some space. So you can say that I stayed at that 85 to 100 zoom. So I stayed 10 feet away from them. I didn't get too close. I gave them their space. How about for the way you actually set up the picture? Where's the rule about where their eyes should be in the like head top? Yep, up in that top third. You guys gonna line them up like mug shots, straight on like this, or you maybe gonna have them? Yes.
Nope.
You're gonna have them angle.
Hold up a sign.
Yeah.
Prison sign.
A little prison sign and all that jazz. No, you're gonna have them angle. You're gonna direct them. You're gonna get at their eye level. If it's a small person, a child, you're gonna get down on their level. So you're gonna explain how you compose the picture. Okay?
Oh, they just delete all these.
Any questions? I hear a lot of talk. You must be really confused. All good?
We don't know.
No, you're not. However,
They're some of the best photos to take.
next week, besides the printouts and your explanation, I want you to bring in the digital version. So if they're on your SD card, make sure they stay on your SD card, because we're going to start working with digital in Photoshop next week.
So we should bring that other book probably.
Trying to think if we jump into that. Bring it along. For
Yeah.
sure, the week after, from then on, we're going to use it. But yeah, bring that bigger book next week also. We're going to do a quick, yeah, definitely bring it, because you guys have all had Photoshop, correct? Everybody in here has had Photoshop. So the review that I do of Photoshop is going to be high speed. And then we're going to jump into really cool stuff.
All right.
Okay? So that is your homework. Evidently, we used to walk around a lot more, because evidently spring came earlier last year or something. I don't know.
When we had that.
That's true, we did.
So, who was-
Whatever. So you have work time if you want to actually go take some of these pictures, because you have classmates who are willing to be your subjects and you don't want to put it off, you can do that. Otherwise, you're free to go. Great idea. Take your SD card out of the back. Everybody get your SD card. Otherwise, they will be there all weekend.
Okay, so this is the US thing.
Yes, it certainly is.
That's
Then
what I
you see
do.
it. Yep.
So make sure you send
Which
pictures
is the reason I don't do it here.
to make it.
Yeah, do the proper ejecting by dragging it down. I always pull my note and then regret it. You should actually do that proper eject. So,
I've never actually had that effective.
I
I feel
I
like
have
it's gonna
one.
happen
yeah, I
someday.
feel like nowadays computers are smart enough
I
to
had
pick
it
out,
fucking
but
once
at
with
the
my
same time.
midterm for computer programming, and it deleted everything.
Oh,
Yeah.
wait, what?
It did
can have
that. Yeah, so I had to restart from scratch. What a fun time. That's why I
Sure
didn't
you
work
turned
on
in
that
your
thing
homework?
anymore.
You sure you didn't
Already?
just save it to
Also
the right
spot?
No, it literally erased it from the memory card.
Oh,
Yes,
just the midterm.
Just my, no, because that was the only thing I was open to save. It was that, and there's a couple other projects I kept showing down there. My Word and
You know,
upload.
like the post I did too. Yeah.
But thank God it worked.
Yeah,
She's 11. You really
I gotta take pictures. Don't want to be on camera.
I'll be on camera for it.
No, that's not worth it.
Yeah, I know.
I just call her from here.
They usually would pay me to stand out of the way.
You'd be better off just turning in your assignment late to take pictures.
Basically.
Yeah.
You'll get downgraded. Yeah.
That's fine.
I said no pet pictures.
It said no animals, Nick.
Yeah, you're only allowed one picture of an animal.
Yes. It's on the announcements in Blackboard. It is, there's a picture of it, so it's the Photoshop CC. It's Scott Shelby. What number release is out there. If you, if this is an issue, just follow along through the class when I'm working through this, and then you can look at it as you go. I think they have it up here, though, so you can give you a little bit.
Thank you.
Yep.